Hi guys, welcome back to Dark Vaults. If you're new here, we cover Irish true crime. If you're not new, welcome back and thank you as always for watching. So we are just going to get straight into today's case. It is an unsolved and it is quite grisly. Just before midnight on the 31st of July 2014, workers in Thornton's recycling plant in Ballyfermot were sifting through the recycling. I'm sure you're all aware that that's what happens when the rubbish gets there. They have to basically go through and check this can be recycled, this can be recycled, this can't, and take it out. Suddenly, one of the workers took out what at first he thought was a mannequin's leg because of the lack of blood or colour. But he quickly realised that it was in fact a human leg, and the Gardaí were immediately called. A doctor would also be called to the scene and he would confirm that it was in fact human. By the following morning, the upper left leg would also be found along with a pelvis. Gardaí would then sift through the rubbish trying to find other body parts, and 60% of a body was found. At first, they reported that they thought it was a female. However, DNA analysis would confirm that the body was in fact a male. They put him at around 25 to 45, between 5'8" and 6 foot. Because of the body being in parts and not having the complete body, it was harder to pinpoint the height. They would also find neurological screws, like for a plate, that was attached to the side of the skull. They believed that the body could have been dead for up to 5 days before it was found. They considered a possibility that it was a homeless man, and they thought one of the possibilities was that they had gotten into one of the bins or the skips to go to sleep. And there are actually other cases of this happening. I'll actually put some up just to show you, because it's happened a couple of times where a person has either died or been like rescued at the last minute. They also considered that it might have been like a foreign person so that they weren't, Irish. So it was actually a crime call episode on the 22nd of September where they reported, that they thought it could have been a foreign homeless man. So when Noel Burke was watching this with his family, it came into his head that it could have possibly have been his son, Mark. But when they mentioned that they thought that the man was foreign, he brushed it aside. His son was going through a lot at that time and could disappear for periods of time. But that thought just wouldn't go away. And so Noel and his younger son, Noel Jr., would actually go looking for their son and brother. Mark Burke was reported as being 36 or 37. He was a father of either 6 or 7, and he had a partner, Tina. He was the second eldest of 5 kids, and they were from Marine Park in Sandyford. His dad, Noel, and his mother, Bernie. Mark was a painter decorator by trade, and he was described as happy-go-lucky, a very gentle, caring guy who only saw the best in others, that he was harmless. And then it's reported that in 1998, Mark changed. He became withdrawn from his loved ones and he began drinking heavily. Some of the sources would talk about his family saying how, they just didn't know what had been troubling him, what caused him to drink. There is, comments about him having mental health issues and that he was, emotionally unstable. So this was going on a long time, and eventually Mark would become homeless. His family would try help. In fact, his dad would talk about how Mark had gone to St. John of God's twice and down to Coomera in Athy. For anyone who might not know, they're rehabilitation centres. I remember being told before, I can't remember if it's 4 or 7, they're the 2 numbers in my head, but for someone who suffers from alcoholism, it takes it's either 4 or 7 times in rehab to eventually be able to stay sober. Some people are lucky and they go in once and that's it, they're set for life. Some don't even need to go to rehab, and then like that there are some who will go in and in and in and still relapse, and that's just the horror of addiction. Mark would hang around in Dunleary Pier, around Dundrum and Stillorg and Sandyford area. It is said that he didn't venture outside of his comfort zone. In 2009, Mark was attacked and robbed of the €40 that he had on him. The attack was bad and he was brought to Beaumont Hospital, and there he had to have a plate screwed onto his skull. The person who was responsible for the attack would be caught and they would get 5 years in prison. The following year, he was attacked again, needing a plate on the other side of his skull. At the time, he was staying in Bentley House, which is like one of the cross care services. One of the sources mentions battling addictions, and so because sometimes when you say addiction, it can mean drugs and stuff as well. Whereas obviously alcoholism is also an addiction, so I don't know if that's what they necessarily meant, or was it a case that he had started to use harder substances. I don't really know. They just say addiction. But everything from his family kind of just indicated that it was drink. On Sunday, the 27th of July 2014, Mark would be arrested after he was reported to have been walking in and out of gardens in Foxrock. So he was brought to Dunleary Garda station as he had outstanding warrants. Garda Robert Keogh would say that he never mentioned about being in trouble or, in fear for his safety. His dad would say, quote, "He was known to Gardaí but for nothing bad. The guards openly say that, and he wasn't a well man." He was brought to court the following morning to Dunleary District Court, and this is on Cork Avenue. Like, as I say, he was harmless, so the judge released him on his own bail, and he leaves the court. And this is the last known sighting of Mark Burke. The body parts would be found 3 days later. The two Knowles went looking in all the usual spots for Mark and couldn't find him. So on the 11th of November, Noel Sr. went into the Garda station and reported his son missing. DNA was taken from his man Bernie and remains were formally identified as Mark Burke. An inquest would be held almost 18 months later, and this is when the grisly details would be released. As I said, about 60% of Mark's body was found. What was not found was his hands, his face, his jaw, his teeth, and his internal organs. You could easily say that as a result of being put into the truck, the body had become crushed, had become broken apart. You could think, well, that kind of just explains it. However, the inquest would show that the body was dismembered prior to being put in because they could tell from the tool marks on the bones. They believed that a 2-inch screwdriver or chisel was used to dismember the body. And like that just doesn't seem like a very big tool. Like I feel like that would just take forever and ever. Like if we think about what happened with the Scissor Sisters when they were just using the kitchen knives and stuff like that, but they were larger knives, whereas that just seems like a huge amount of work. The state pathologist Michael Curtis would also say that there was a pungent odour coming from the body parts, and this was from glacial acetic acid. They said it was like a vinegar type acid, and this was basically covering the body. So they believed that the person either tried to dissolve the body, or it was a case of trying to cover or dissolve the tattoos that Mark had. Which leads us on to the intention. So it is believed that they wanted to conceal the identity of Mark, and that's why, the specific body parts that weren't found were the parts that would identify him: his teeth, his hands for his fingerprints. So, I mean, let's be honest, this sounds like gangland. We're thinking body is chopped up, trying to conceal the identity and stuff. It's serious crime. But the Gardaí have very clearly and repeatedly said Mark Burke was not connected to any serious criminals. He had no connections to the gangland scene. Detective Inspector Colin O'Malley would say that the death was being treated as unexplained. They couldn't tell the cause of death. Like, the Gardaí could not think of any obvious motive for why someone would do this to Mark. During the investigation, there was over 600 lines of inquiries, 580 statements were taken, and the Gardaí sifted through 1,000 tonnes of rubbish. Unfortunately, because of the delay in finding out who it was, all the CCTV that could have possibly have caught Mark in Dunleary and the surrounding areas was overwritten. This year it was revealed that Gardaí believe that Mark's remains may have been left in the Drummartin area of Goatstown, and that it was here they were put into one of the skips, and that's how they ended up in Ballyfermot. I don't know why they think this. It is said that he kind of frequented that area a bit. Mark's father would say, quote, "We met a guard on the case and he told us that Mark was known to hang out in the Drummartin area and that they think his remains may have been left there before they were transported to Ballyfermot." Why they would think that his remains actually were dropped there, left there, and that's how they ended up in the truck, I don't know. I find it interesting because if it is a case that they were trying to keep, his identity from being found, like who the remains were belonging to, they went to a big effort to do that. Cutting the body up, taking the parts that identify him, trying to remove his tattoos and stuff, to then put his remains in the green bin. So for anyone outside of Ireland, I'm sure your bins are the same, but here we have the green bin and the black bin, and you have a brown bin as well. But the green bin and the black bin is your general rubbish. It is like dumped into a tip somewhere. As far as I know, it's dumped and that's it. Nothing has gone through. Whereas in Torton's, as I said earlier, the recycling, it has to be determined that the stuff that's gone in is recyclable. So they have to go through everything, and anything that's actual rubbish they have to take out. So by putting his remains into one of the green bins or the green skips, they had to have known that that's what happens in the green bin. Like, why not put his remains in the black bin? If it was dark out, maybe it would be hard to distinguish the colours, but if you've gone to all that effort, would you not make that extra little step and ensure you put him into the right bin? Because I don't know, I just don't know why you would go to all that. Like, it's the Gardaí say like it was sophisticated work in what they done to dismember his body and do what they did. Why would you be that sophisticated and then like not know that the green bins get searched? So I don't know, I just found that interesting because I was like, why did you go to all this effort and then allow him to be found anyway? Now, if you were trying to go by the logic of the dissolving theory, if it was a fact that they had chopped up the body and thought that they would actually be able to dissolve it and get rid of it that way, maybe the parts that were found just were more difficult to do that to. I don't know, I don't really go with that. I think that they were just trying to conceal the identity. That's why they done what they done and took what they took. Like, honestly, in some ways I feel like it sounds like it's like the start of a serial killer or something, but we would have seen other cases of it then happening where these kind of bodies were being found, the remains, dismembered remains of people, and it didn't. So I don't know, I would lean towards it being like that. Someone, he obviously crossed the wrong person, or just crossed paths with the wrong person. If he had been drinking, could he have made a remark in front of the wrong person? Like, the scary thing is people can get very annoyed, upset, feel disrespected, all of this over very simple and trivial things. Like, you've seen it yourself, you hear about it yourself. Like, I've heard of people slagging someone else in a pub because their team has lost, and like the other person literally following them home and stabbing them. Like that has literally happened in Dublin, So I find it's easy for that to happen, where he could have just, it might not be that he had any criminal acquaintances or elements to him or in his life, but something just happened in front of the wrong person. Something was done or said that pissed them off and they wanted to get rid of him. I think it's safe to say that more than one person was involved, and ideally the family and the Gardaí are hoping that that's the case, that more people know and that someone will come forward. Chief Superintendent Christy Mangan would say about the case that he believes there was more than one person involved in the murder and the cover-up. He said, "This is a highly unusual case and one of 4 cases of dismemberment that I have investigated in my career. This was a huge investigation and it is my belief that perhaps more than one person was involved. I am convinced that there are people in the community who have vital information on this terrible crime but who have yet to come forward." Mark's partner will talk about, the kind of monster who would slice off someone's face. Quote, "What sort of person does this type of thing to another human being? Whoever this is depraved and pure evil. Whoever did this didn't just dismember Mark's body and remove his face. They also had the capacity to remove his organs. Only someone who has evil pumping through their veins could be capable of such a barbaric act. Mark's brother, Noel Jr., would say, "I know my brother, and I know he wouldn't have travelled far from Dunleary or Dundrum. The only enemy Mark had was himself. We're baffled as to why anyone would do that to him. He wasn't just a homeless man. He was a father, a son, a brother. He was a person. How would the partners of who was involved in this feel if it was their son? We can't even mourn his date of death because we don't have it. We can't put it on his headstone." This is a very cruel crime, and the nature of it was very vicious. So, not only for our family, but for the community and society, someone has to be brought to justice for it. Noel Sr. would say, quote, "We just want the killers to be brought to justice." Mark's son, Mark Jr., who was 16 when his dad disappeared, two of his sons actually, has said about he will, continue fighting for justice for his dad. Quote, "My dad was completely harmless and would never have hurt a fly. My message to the coward who killed him and to the cowards that have covered this up: we will never give up." Mark would say how he would meet anyone, anywhere, at any time, if it meant getting more information on his dad's murder. His son Craig, who was only 11 when he disappeared, was also joining the fight for justice. "I'm an adult now too, and we are all in this fight for justice for our dad. We have a right to know every aspect about this case and to know what can be done to bring those behind this despicable act to justice. I was only 11 when this happened, and no child should have to lose a parent in such a barbaric manner. All it needs is for one person to pick up the phone before the same thing happens to someone else." Mark's sister, Emma, would say, "My brother was a wonderful person who just saw the good in people, and I couldn't even give him a kiss goodbye because of what those cowards did. He will never rest in peace properly because there are parts of him still missing. I'm only starting to get stronger now, but our family will always keep fighting for Mark because no one deserves to die in such a depraved fashion." His dad, Noel, would talk about how every so often he would take out the photos of his son's body parts on the conveyor belt, and that he would do this kind of grim act to remind himself that he needs to keep fighting for justice for his son. To be honest, I was surprised. I didn't think you would be allowed to. I didn't think they would give the family images like that. Guys, that is really all there is on Mark Burke. It's still unsolved. It doesn't seem to be like they have a lot of leads, although I'm interested to see why they now all of a sudden, after 10 years, think that he was left in Drummartin. So hopefully, maybe that was because someone had come forward with something, and then hopefully maybe they'll feel more comfortable to give some more information. Gardaí are appealing for anyone who knew Mark at the time. It is said that he had a very small circle of acquaintances, that if any of them haven't come forward before, they are hoping that they will come forward now with this new appeal on the 10th anniversary. Obviously, if you have any information, I can put the details down below for where you can contact. Yeah, I don't want to ramble too much, although I did want to talk about a bit of how we're getting some good news in the courts recently. So in the last couple of days, Graham Dwyer lost his final appeal, I think it is, for the conviction of the murder of Elaine O'Hara. So I don't think he has many more options now. He will just have to carry out the life sentence. And I really hope that it is one that's actually going to be life, or really long, because I genuinely definitely think he has the capability to do it again. And then some other ones. So Raymond Shorten was convicted of 2 rapes and the rape of a child as well. From that one was from a good few years ago. I believe that woman could be in her 20s now. Horrific. And his sentences were consecutive. And so you probably know that I'm always giving out, because we're constantly just hearing about murderers, rapists, all these people getting concurrent sentences, so that it doesn't matter that they get 3, 10-year sentences. They'll only serve 10 because they're concurrent. They're all to be served at the same time. Whereas consecutive essentially means they have to serve one, then the next, then the next. And that is rare. hopefully that's a positive sign for the justice system. And then another one, a man was convicted of the rape of 3 sex workers. I think one was attempted rape, but he got 18 years, which is long. It's good to see, that the sentences are getting harsher. And the judge in that case, he does say like the time for leniency on violence against women is over, and that hopefully it is, and this is the beginning of harsher sentences, harsher deterrence, and stronger rehabilitation where possible. So yeah, I just wanted to kind of mention them because I just thought it was a positive thing for the justice system because we're always giving out about it. And so some other good news is we have finally reached 5,000 subscribers. Boop, 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 boop. Yeah, so I woke up today and it was at 5,003. So we're there. So thank you to everyone who has subscribed, to everyone who watches, to everyone who likes and comments and interacts with the channel, because that's obviously then how I get shown to other viewers. So if you are new and you have liked the video, you're liking the content, please do consider subscribing, liking, interacting, sharing with other true crime people, and let's keep making content and bringing awareness to lesser known Irish crimes. That is enough of a ramble. Thank you very much, and yeah, we shall see you in the next video. Thanks. Bye.